Continuing our series on the e-commerce growth equation, visitors times conversion rate times your cash multiplier minus your variable cost equals profit. Today we're going to be focusing in on the front of the equation, visitors. We're going to begin by exploring what it means to have a healthy, diverse visitor mix. For many years, most of the businesses, the last few years as we've discussed, have focused exclusively on driving traffic through paid acquisition through a source called Facebook, you know it well, and measuring that on a metric called ROAS, which is a function of AOV. In discussing in the cash multiplier series, we discuss why movement away from this singular flow is really critical. But today we want to go further into understanding of what it looks like to have a healthy front of this equation. We're going to be beginning by looking at what we call the traffic pie. If you go into Google Analytics and you look into your channel breakdown, so we're going to call this a channel breakdown, you can see where all of your website traffic comes from. And if you were to express that as a pie graph, that would be your traffic pie. We want to talk today about what an ideal state of your traffic pie is. All the usual caveats included about businesses that run in lots of different ways. But in a healthy business, a traffic pie begins with a 50-50 split between paid and organic traffic. Paid, organic. What that means is that half of your traffic is coming from free sources and half of it are coming from paid sources. Now let's talk about what we mean by organic and generally how you're going to see this 50% broken up. 25% of your overall traffic or 50% of your revenue is going to be coming from, we'll actually call it about 22%-ish, 22-ish percent you want coming from direct traffic. These are people that are putting your website in directly to their website or to your website. Another 20-ish percent should be coming from organic search. Now, of course, organic search is going to include branded and categorical search terms. And the other percentages here are going to be a makeup of email, somewhere around 5% of your traffic. But what's important about email is it's going to be 5% of your traffic, but ideally 15% of your revenue. And then the other 5% will be from what we would call referral. So these give you an indication of that organic slice, 50% of your traffic, and where it should be coming from. If you find yourself to be disproportionately over-indexed, strong in one area or weak in another, it's worth beginning to think of that as an entry point into exploring areas of opportunity. Now, for some businesses, if you are in a search category where there is large categorical volume, obviously there's greater opportunity to improve this area. Some businesses, if you're in a brand new product category, there's going to be very little existing search volume. And so it's going to be important to consider that when looking at your own breakdown. The rest of this, for most of the businesses that we see, looks something like this, where almost 35% of their traffic is coming from Facebook and IG. 35 to 40% in a lot of cases. And then the other 15 to 20% is going to be coming from paid search, with, in some cases, some other portion representing display or other channels of advertising. But in general, you're seeing Facebook and Instagram represent the largest single source of traffic for most e-commerce businesses that we see. Paid search second, and paid search somewhere even with direct, organic, etc. So in an idyllic state, the more diverse your traffic pie is, the healthier your business. Just like an investment portfolio, the more over-indexed you are on any single channel, the less likely or the more at risk your business is of experiencing a significant blow when that traffic reduction happens in that channel. One other channel that often will show up in the organic side is organic social. Making sure that your channel taggings are correct in Google Analytics is really critical to being able to examine this in a healthy fashion. So, how does this begin to think about how we look at each of these channels now and improve them? Well, one of the things I want you to think about, not just in traffic, but also in acquisition is your organic to paid ratio. So if you look in any given month, what percentage of your customers are coming from each of these sources? And again, for most of the businesses, especially early states, we're seeing new customers happening at a 37 split organic paid ratio, somewhere in this area. The more that you can balance this out, the closer you can get your organic paid new customer acquisition rate to match this 50-50 traffic pie, the better off you're going to be. Now, as you begin to explore each of these channels and think about areas of opportunity to improve them, as with all data, we encourage you to approach this like an investigative journalist. As you begin to break down your own traffic pie and figure out where there are areas of opportunity, the way that we will often explore them and figure out how to improve them works as follows. For organic, or let's just look at search as an area of opportunity. Search we look at in what we call sort of a 2x2 square, where there's a combination of volume and competition. And this is the same sort of thought work that will apply to both paid search as well as organic search. And depending on where your business and the set of keywords associated with it fall in this matrix, will determine how much emphasis we place on the opportunity related to organic traffic. So if you consider this, where's the ideal spot what quadrant would you want to be in? Well, obviously it's over here. This is smiley face. You want high volume, low competition. That's how you get to a smiley face. If your brand exists over here, there's a lot of opportunity to affect the quadrants of this related to search, and we will often put a focus there. If you exist over here, we would call this sort of an even opportunity, where think of this as categories like t-shirts or shoes or makeup, where there's tons of search volume, but it's highly competitive and very difficult to make meaningful traffic differences in those areas. Now, obviously, this area would be the worst. Areas of low volume, low competition, or high competition, where you have a small set of keywords that are highly competitive and your ability to make an impact is really not that great. Now, if you have low volume, low competition, that's similar to this quadrant where we think of that as an opportunity, but it's not going to make a meaningful dent as you continue to scale up. So if your business exists in this quadrant, high volume, low competition, and there's lots of tools, SEM, Rush, etc., that can help you to determine with your set of keywords where you fall on this, this helps us to think about the viability of search as a channel. Of course, we're always going to consider Facebook and Instagram from the advertising component. We're going to go in and do a breakdown about the traffic opportunities. And one of the ways that you can think about your capacity for traffic, right? Traffic is simply a function of the cost, the CPC, so what you're paying over your spend, right? So spend over CPC equals traffic. And if I think of CPC as a function of CTR and CPM, one of the ways I think about my capacity to affect the traffic of an ad account is related to this metric right here. If we can assume in some ways a consistent audience, one of the ways that I'm going to look into an ad account and particularly think about traffic is just thinking about our ability to improve the CTR in the ad account. So that's one area where I can quickly at glance determine, hey, how much room is there to here? Obviously, ROAS is ultimately the indicator. If we are getting a really high ROAS in the account, there's probably room for more volume and scale. But these are just some little ways in which I can glimpse at each of these. Direct is the hardest channel to most obviously affect. It tends to be a lagging indicator that follows the other trends. Direct will almost always hold a percentage somewhere between 10 to 20% because it sort of functions as a variable of overall awareness of the brand. But we call your direct traffic your brand awareness traffic. And so we want to see that outside of paid spend, what is going to happen in this channel. So activities like events, and offline marketing and influencer content and all sorts of myriad of activities can affect direct advertising, as well as things like podcasts or radio where there's not a direct outbound CTR. Also, we often see that when brands do large Instagram posts with influencers, so we have a client that, for example, if they do a Kylie Jenner posts, you'll often see most of that traffic picked up in the direct channel because there is no outbound link inside of posts on Instagram for organic posts. So there's lots of stuff that can end up in this category. The other thing to really think about is just email. Now, generally when we look at email as a traffic source, we look more about the percentage of revenue that's being driven, but there's this 5 and 15 rule with email, which is a good sort of principle to think about to determine how you're doing with email. which is 5% of traffic, 15% of rev. So traffic and rev. So each of these are little ways that you can begin to think about driving more health into your visitor pie, your traffic pie, is to begin to think about every channel source. And one of the things that we do is often we will have a task list for opportunities to improve every section of this. And then we just create a hierarchy and sequence the areas of opportunity relative to where we think we can make the most immediate impact. So the next thing to do with this is, as we begin to look at conversion rate next, we'll begin to understand, to help make a decision about which traffic to focus on, we'll begin to understand conversion rate by channel and begin to understand which traffic is not only the highest in volume, but of the most value to us. So, as with any great investor, especially in this time of market tumult, diversification matters. Diversification is a sign of health and sustainability. Really understanding those organic to paid ratios of both your traffic pie and your new customer acquisition are critical to success in this formula.